Well, Jeff, according to local election officials I spoke with today, there have been no major complaints or issues so far. That is rare, but not surprising considering primaries have much lower voter turnout compared to midterm and general elections. But state officials are still investigating hundreds of cases from the past 4 years.
Donald Trump is right. We must secure the border and end sanctuary cities.
As Secretary of State, Ryan Kemp fought Obama twice and won to stop illegal immigrants from voting.
With such an ominous tone, you might expect Georgia has major problems with illegal voting. According to records obtained from the Secretary of State's office, though, the Board of Elections has launched just 6 cases of non-citizen voting investigations since 2014, all of them still pending. You know what did receive more complaints? Taking pictures of your ballot and inside polling precincts. Records show the state has investigated 17 of these cases over the past 4 years. Since 2014, the State Board of Elections has launched a total 447 investigations. Some of the most common include voter registration problems, complaints involving polling places or polling workers, and absentee voting issues.
While penalties for election violations can be serious, in many cases we found people who break the rules never see jail time, and in some cases often take longer to adjudicate than even murder cases. For example, I found one case involving a man who voted for his dead wife. It took about 4 years to investigate, and the man received a $300 fine.
4 years for that one case. Andy, thank you so much.